All right. Well, as we said, thank you so much for coming out during the cold, everything else, but I'm excited to be able to show you the new DC2000 camera. It's probably the most sophisticated camera that SeaLife has ever come up with. It is going to be a camera that goes into a housing once again. We're still going to go forward with the Micro 2.0, 32 and 64 gig cameras. Those are more of a point of view camera that you just push the button and you start recording. This camera is going to take us into the realm of professional photography. It's going to be a 20 megapixel camera. It will shoot 1080p HD video at 60 frames per second standard. One of the biggest things we've asked for is the capability of shooting a camera with RAW. This camera will now do that. A lot of the other cameras, or most other cameras out on the market, shoot in what's called a JPEG format. When we talk about a 20 megapixel camera, that means there's 20 million points of light that's forming up with each individual picture. If you take a JPEG picture of that, the camera compresses the picture down and you're not able to manipulate all of that information that's stored in the camera. With a RAW file, you're able to do that. So if you see a little red speck in 1 pixel in the eyeball of a fish, you can go in and change that. It's just incredible the amount of power you have in post-photo editing with the cameras. It will have full manual modes controls also, so we're going to be able to take over full f-stop and shutter speed priorities. We can do a manual white balance. We can change ISO. Everything we can do from the camera, we can do using either these piano keys on the back, or we do have a dial up on top that allows us to go into a scene mode. There's 27 different land setting modes in this camera. There's fast water, slow water. There's a food picture setting. So if you want to take a picture of your dinner, you put it into the food setting. The camera will pick the proper f-stop and shutter speed for you. Really some impressive stuff. The big thing about SeaLife cameras, and I wish there was some way to show you as a big group, there's only, SeaLife is the only company that makes a camera specifically for underwater use. Everybody else is using a land camera and putting a housing and filters and everything else around it. We designed for our cameras specifically for underwater. We do that by calling what is a dive and snorkel mode. As you're descending in the water column, excuse me, all of the bright colors, the reds, yellows, oranges, get absorbed by the water. You get down to depth and everything is blue and green. So you get over that by either putting an artificial light source on, a red filter on the outside of the camera, or you do what's called a manual white balance. Well, as opposed to putting a filter on the outside of the camera, we wrote a software program that changes the depth, or changes the color correction based on your depth inside the camera system, so you don't have any accessories to purchase. To get a GoPro to do what the Micro 2.0 cameras we're going to do right out of the box, it's almost $300 worth of additional options to get it to that level. So that's the big difference between a land camera being made to work underwater or an underwater camera. Getting back to the 2.0, it is a rubber-coated housing, so it's very tough, very durable. We do have the piano key system on the back, so if we want to play back the pictures we've taken, we can hit the playback button. And then there's two little buttons on the, two little arrows on the flash and focus. We can go up and down using the outside of the piano keys and scroll back through to see what type of pictures we've taken. We can also do focus. With the focal length for this camera, it's 4 inches out to infinity. So if I was trying to take a picture of the camera, I could be that close to my subject and still get the camera to focus. And then they bring it right up and shoot all the way back to the back of the room and get Jerry in focus as well. We are using a Sony CMOS 1-inch square sensor. Sony makes some of the finest sensors on the market. It's extremely fast, it's extremely reliable. The write time to the card is minimal. Focal length, or the exposure settings on the camera, we start at a 1.8. So it's a huge wide open lens and it's going to be great for low light, low visibility. We're going to go up to an f11 with 13 different stops. We will also have 17 mechanical vanes that will reduce that aperture as opposed to using a software setting for it as well. So a very little advanced camera for us. Up on the top, we do have the ability to change the flash settings. We can force the flash, turn off the flash. Those are mostly settings for non-strobe and land applications. Up on top, we can choose the scene mode. If we don't want to go through the 27 different land settings, we can put the camera into the eye camera. And what this is going to do is it's going to determine what type of shooting it thinks the camera is in, and the camera will automatically choose that adjustment for you. We can go into a full automatic program. Again, we can adjust the shutter speed, how fast the camera takes a picture, the time the exposure is actually open. We can adjust the aperture, how big that eyeball is, so if you get more into creative stuff, you can do that with this camera as well. With the Micro 2.0s, you have 2 f-stops and like 6 different speeds. This has got 14 different f-stops and 22 different speed settings for us as well. We do have a full underwater setting, a full manual setting that will help you walk you through those 2 different settings. And we have a panorama setting also. So if you ever want to get the picture where you have this huge picture all in one shot, we're going to set it in there, push the shutter button, keep the camera stable on a line, and it's going to cover about 120 degrees. So it's going to cover a wide area for it. So if you ever see the posters like on the back where you've got this huge expanse or a big line of trees coming across or anything like that, we can do that with this camera too. We will have a built-in flash on the camera. The Micro 2.0s, we did get away from flash photography. We're reintroducing it with the DC2000. The fiber optic cable is coming up to the strobe. This just clips up on top. It covers the onboard flash that's got a built-in diffuser to it. We put this up on top, lock it in place. When the onboard flash on the camera fires, it's transferred up the fiber optic cable and triggers our slave strobe. So it's how we get the cameras to be communicating as opposed to a TTL or through the lens. That makes the camera system much more expensive. Excuse me, I'm just getting over bronchitis. The inner camera itself is one of the largest, most durable cameras we've ever made as well. It does have a full 3-inch diagonal screen on the back, and all of these little buttons on the back correspond to some setting on the back of the housing in here. It does take a little bit of an intuitive work with it so you can get used to where the buttons are and everything, but it's a real easy camera to navigate through. We do have a on-off button up on top. If I want to start taking a video, all I do is push the video button, and I'm starting to record. You can see how the screen is kind of red in here also. This is the dive and snorkel mode. This is the reintroduction of the reds and oranges. So during our videos, that will happen as well. If I hit the shutter button in the middle of a video, it's going to capture a 2 megapixel still picture. It's going to save it as a separate file. It's going to be saved outside of the video as well, so it's not going to interfere with the flow of the video. Right now I do have this set in a RAW setting, so I'm able to get about 1,327 pictures on a 64 gig SD card. If I put just in a JPEG setting, I'm going to get about 25,000 pictures, roughly 2.5 hours worth of video. So a lot of storage. You know, that's a lifetime of shooting for some folks as well. We have a digital zoom built into the camera. Part of the cost of a camera is if you have that optical zoom where the lens is physically moving in and out, gets to be expensive, and the camera is a little bit more sensitive to bumps and everything else. Underwater, you don't want to use any type of zoom. You want to have that lens is wide open. This has got about an 80-degree field of vision. If you start zooming in, you decrease the amount of light that can come back into the camera and degrade your picture. So you want to zoom with your fins, not your fingertips. The rough rule of thumb with artificial light sources for underwater photography is fingertips and fin tips. You should be able to take a picture, reach out and touch your subject with your fingers, or at most extend your leg, and the fin tip should be within that distance. Usually 6 to 8 feet is the maximum distance to be able to shoot with an artificial light source. Excuse me. The camera itself is going to be water tested to 60 feet. We're not going to sell it separately. It's going to become only sold with the housings. But this can go diving right now to 60 feet and still be fine with it as well. Put it inside the housing, we're going to be able to go down to 200 feet. Any questions, Dawn? We're kind of
Does it float?
Oh, negatively buoyant. We will have float straps available for it. They're an international orange. If you have the whole setup here with the strobes and the photo video lights, it's going to slow the descent, but it's not going to float the camera. You better be on your horse to go get it on the way down. But all of this will be negatively buoyant. Any other questions? Yes.
Is the new camera adaptable to any older versions of other cameras? You know, SeaLife cameras?
It won't fit in the housings. It's a standalone camera. However, all of the accessories are going to be good for it. So for instance, I've got the 16mm fisheye lens. It's going to pop right on the front of this and work perfectly with it. We used to have a 24mm wide-angle lens that would work with it as well. I can hook up the old strobes, I can hook up photo-video lights. Just the camera itself is unique, but everything, all of the other accessories are going to work perfectly with the camera as well. And we try very hard, unless we discontinue a camera model, to make sure everything, all of the accessories and everything else still work with it as well.
Can the camera itself attach to like the Sea Dragon 650 or anything like that?
It's a quarter 20 screw mount on the bottom. So if you have like an aquapod or anything like that, you can put that up there, have the aquapod on the bottom with the light hanging down below it. We do have an adapter that is a quarter 20 screw that goes into the Sea Dragon mount.
Mm-hmm.
So you could hook it up with that as well and have a light directly with this camera. For that aspect of it, I might just go into the dive and snorkel mode just to see what happens. I'll just pass this camera around, let you take a look at it. Power button's on the inside with the little white clip on it. By getting back into the flash photography side of things, what I like doing is putting the camera pretty much in automatic mode. I don't want to be overthinking my camera when I'm down and trying to take pictures. I just want to concentrate on my dive, my composition, everything else. So with the strobe, this is a full digital strobe. When a strobe fires, this is going to be about 16,000 lumens at the speed of light. It's just from 0 to 16,000. That's where you get that brilliant pop of color, the great field of depth and everything else with it as well. With this, we can also dial in 1% increments exactly what exposure setting we need. So if you're trying to take a picture of a coral head and you want to get the absolute perfect exposure, you can just sit here and move this by 1 degree or 1% until you come up with the perfect exposure. However, you can also go into an A setting, which is automatic. And that's going to activate this little black light sensor up on the front of the strobe. Now, provided I've got this pointed directly at my subject, in 35 thousandths of a second, this is going to determine the reflectivity of my subject and apply the proper amount of flash for me. So by the time I push my shutter button halfway down and get a green focus square on here, the strobe knows how much flash to apply. I get my green focus square, and then I push the button, it triggers the strobe, and you come up with a great exposure. The reason I've got this set up with this other light on the side, this is one of our new lights. This is going to be called a 2300 Auto. And it's going to be a 2300 lumen light in a floodlight setting. We're using Cray chips in this as opposed to LED bulbs. They're a little bit further up towards the face of the light, so you're getting a better beam pattern. But, let me turn this down. Just going to mess you up, Trey? Okay. What we're going to be able to do is turn this light on and go up to 2300 lumens, 1650, 825. I'm going to tap it again, and now it's going to go into an automatic mode. There's a light sensor in the front of this light also. So right now it's determining that that needs a lot of light put on it. But now I'm going to come over and I'm going to check my computer, and the light's going to dim for me automatically. I'm going to come back out, it builds itself back up. The beauty of this is while I've got this light set in the automatic setting, the strobe is going to be interpreting exposure based on this light that's measuring the exact distance, and it's going to measure the distance based on this light. I'm going to get my green focus squares, and everything is going to work together to give me an amazing picture. Now we also have what's called the Sea Dragon system with this also. Anytime you see any of these red levers in here, these are just going to be quick release points. So what I'm going to do is pull this off. I could put another strobe over here, I could put a more powerful light, I could put a smaller light. Unfortunately, when the camera's in this configuration, if you ever get into a lot of particulates in the water, it's going to look like it's snowing underwater. It's called backscatter. What's happening is the light is coming out of the light source, hitting the subject and bouncing back. Unfortunately, all these particulates that are in front of the camera are being illuminated by the lights. So what I'm going to do is take my flex arm, move it off to the side, angle it in. I'm still putting my light on my subject, but now it's bouncing back to its light source and not illuminating these particulates. So this is the meat of the coconut. This is what makes everything work by getting these lights further away from the housing of the camera. when you see the big professional photographers out there, looks like they're flying a F-14 fighter, because they've got their arms over here, and they've got to adjust this, and adjust this, and adjust this, and adjust this, and by that time the fish is gone. So this is a real easy way to allow us to move these lights around specifically where we need them for the best emphasis as well. So if you have a camera system with artificial lights and don't have flex arms, I would recommend getting these. Any questions on that at all?
What's the battery life before recharge?
We have about a 2.5 hour battery life for roughly 250 pictures, about an hour and a half worth of constant video.
Okay.
We are developing a external charging tray for it. I don't carry anything less than 3 batteries with me at any given time. I've always got 2 batteries with me, one on the tray back in the room. You know, I'm just constantly rotating my batteries. Right now, these batteries just charge in the camera. So if you're trying to go out to dinner at night without spare batteries, you can't take pictures. You don't have a camera with a flash or anything else. Definitely take extra batteries with you as well. As we said, it does take the micro SD card. It does not come with the camera. We do recommend the use of a class 10 because of the HD video, and up to a 64. I haven't tried a 128 to see how those do with it. 64 gig is what we're recommending. And everything usually comes with a little adapter, so you can put it into a standard SD reader once you're done with that as well. I'm so sorry. Any other questions on the camera at all? Housing settings?
It's got a freshwater setting now, right?
Yes, if we go into the white balance setting in the camera, you'll see a green water setting. Primarily the dive and snorkel mode is really good if there's something red or yellow or orange to reintroduce. And quite often diving out on Lake Michigan, everything's just covered with a brown layer of silt. It really doesn't do you all that much good, so you're pretty much guaranteed you want to be in an external light source for a lot of diving in the Great Lakes. We can do what's called the manual white balance also, and that's where you put a white screen in front of the camera and execute a white balance. By defining white at that specific depth, all of the other corresponding colors in the area automatically adjust to that definition. One of the big things about an automatic white balance, though, anytime you change your depth by as little as 10 feet, you should execute another white balance, because there's that much variance between it. With the dive and snorkel mode, it's about a 25-foot variance, usually down to about 50, 60 feet. At that point, it's usually overpowered by the loss of color, and go to an artificial light source after that point. If you get a chance when the camera's coming around, or if it's too late, I do invite you to autofocus the camera. One of the things we hear a lot of is, what's the lag time of the camera? Why is it taking so long to shoot my pictures? In order to get the cameras to work, there's no way to manually focus these cameras, so it has to be done by pushing the shutter button halfway down. Because of the sensor in this camera, usually by the time you get that button halfway down, it just goes boom, just immediately into focus. DC-1400, some of our other cameras, you push the shutter button halfway down, the camera sends a beam of infrared light out, it bounces off your subject, and then it focuses based on how long it takes for that light to come back. If you're moving or just a little bit, you don't have it fully focused, you push the shutter button, the camera's saying, should I shoot now, should I shoot? And then finally it's just going to shoot. Usually you get some type of a blurry picture. With this camera, it's almost instantaneous. If you go to push the shutter button halfway down, it is focused and ready to shoot within half a second. It's really a very fast time to it as well. Any questions, Jenny?
No, I think
A lot of people are saying too, well, all I end up with is fish butts. I can never get a picture of a fish. What's going on with it? So in all honesty, you're chasing the fish. Because they've got their little areas staked out on the reef, and that's their home. And they'll do anything they can to drag you away from that home. So if you start chasing them, that's exactly what they want. So they're just going to keep leading you further and further away. It's very difficult with dive trips anymore, because most people want to just drop you in the water, take you on an Indianapolis 500 lap around a coral head, get you back on the boat, go back in and pick up the next dive. When I get out on a boat, I say, guys, I'm a photographer. You go take your lap. I'm going to be within 30 feet of the descent line. I'm going to have the best dive of my life. We'll see you back on board. you know, if they're a good dive operation, they'll let you do that, because you can't be taking photography and zooming around with everybody cutting in front of you, kicking up the silt, chasing the animals, everything else as well. When it comes to light on photography, photography is actually Latin for the creation of images using light. And so right off that says immediately you've got to have as much light as possible on your subjects. If you're trying to take macro photography, quite often you're leaning over your subject, you're blocking the light from behind you. You know, so you want to get as much light on your subject as possible. Try and shoot up on your subjects. Try and capture that light coming down from the surface. Like this poster in the back with the people coming up, you can actually see the waves of the ripples on the top of the surface because he's capturing that ambient light. There's not a lot of light and he's too far away from those people, but there's enough light coming down from the surface. So take advantage of it. Now, if you're trying to take a picture of a beautiful queen angelfish as it's swimming against a coral head, you know, don't try and take it while it's against all those colors because you're just going to lose the color for it. Try and get beside it, in front of it, anything you can do to try and separate it from all of those colors, and then really make it pop by hitting it with a bunch of light coming from your camera as well. One of these things this camera will do also, if you get into more, hear the rule of thirds or the rule of nines. You're either going to try and separate the screen into 3 different sections where you put your primary focus of your subject, or this camera will allow us to do rule of nines. So as opposed to putting everything in the middle, put the main subject of your picture up in the upper left-hand corner. Just try different compositions and see what happens with different things. Field of vision on this is 4 inches. I guess I went over that, 4 inches out to infinity. And then it does have about an 80-degree wide or 80-degree lens built into it. If you put the fisheye lens on here, you're going to get it out to 110 degrees. So conceivably, with 3 pictures, you would be able to take an entire horizontal picture all the way around. In your panoramic mode, you'd really be able to get a wide field of vision with that as well. So a lot of really fun things.
With your Micro 2.0, you can download to your phone, just sitting there, there's a Wi-Fi download. Does this new camera have Wi-Fi download also?
Yes, it does. It will have Wi-Fi. We're in the process of developing a new app for it also. All you have to do is hit the Wi-Fi button and the camera will establish the connection with your iOS or your Android device without having, with our old system, we had to go and turn on the Wi-Fi, find the network, hit the transfer buttons, everything else with it. My understanding, I haven't seen the app yet, but as soon as you hit the Wi-Fi button, it establishes the contact and it starts downloading all of your pictures onto your iOS device for you. It's pretty cool.
Is that whether or not you have Wi-Fi available on there?
This will become a hotspot if you don't have Wi-Fi on your
will?
tablet. Yeah, this will become the hotspot.
Huh.
However, if you don't have Wi-Fi on your iOS or your Android device, you're not able to update everything. One of the things the camera will do also, when you do take a raw picture, it will also save a JPEG picture. So conceivably, if you have iOS Wi-Fi, during the middle of your surface interval and your dive from the Maldives, you can go out and you can take your JPEG pictures, your low resolution pictures, post those on your social media. Here's my last dive at the Maldives 7 minutes ago, and start posting all this on your social network, and then still have your raw pictures so that you can work on those and post photo editing afterwards. Retail pricing, going to get into salesman mode here. The camera and housing is going to retail for $699. Okay, I was expecting to be, wow, that's a great price. We will be able to have a setup that will have just the single tray. It won't include the fisheye lens, but the camera and the strobe for $999. So that's going to be an amazing price for us as well. The flex arms are going to be an extra $50. This light, if you're interested in this at all, is going to come with a grip and a single tray. It is going to be available for $399. Is it available now?
Yeah, we actually just have the head though,
Oh, okay.
right now.
Yeah.
But we have the trays available for extra stuff.
But that's the neat part about this system too, is if you have a 1200 lumen light and you want to upgrade, you just pop this off, buy the head from Jenny for $299.
Yeah.
And then just pop it back in place, and it's a bigger director set. You just build your system however you want it to work.
And we brought in the heads because of the fact that a number of customers already have like the arms and the trays, and I don't know about you, but I have quite a collection of trays, and I really could not having more, so that's why I started putting in the heads. Works
Okay.
a little better.
Yeah, when you're going to put the camera inside the housing also, we are going to, it's an early production model, it sticks a little bit, so bear with me.
Because we're watching.
Pause this, Sherry. What we have is just a simple closure system to it. This is the O-ring that keeps the water from coming into the housing. This is a silicone O-ring. A lot of other people just use rubber, so you have to continually put silicone grease on it and maintain it and everything else. Do not put any type of silicone on the O-ring for a SeaLife camera. If we do find that the camera floods and comes back to us, we find silicone on there, your warranty will be void. So this is just going to pull out. It's very easy to replace. I've got Siberian Huskies at home, and a piece of dog hair laying across this is going to be enough to flood this camera at depth. So if you see any type of dried salt, a piece of sand, anything else, lick your finger, clean it all up, tap this, make sure it's pushed back down into the groove, and you should be ready to go. Up on the top here also, when the cameras are charging and discharging, they put out a lot of heat. And this is a place for a little packet called a moisture muncher. It's a little packet or a little tube of desiccant. It just slides in place here. They come out baby blue. When they turn pink, throw them away. I've tried putting them in a microwave, slow baking them, putting them in a bag of rice. Nothing rejuvenated them enough. So they cost about $1 a piece. When you put your moisture muncher inside the housing, let me come back here. When you put the moisture muncher inside the housing, make sure you do it in a nice air-conditioned room where there's a lot of dry air. If you're down at the boat and you put it on here, it's just like closing up a bag of potato chips here in the Midwest. If you don't burp that hot, steamy air out of it, the chips are going to go stale. So put the moisture muncher in your room. You're going to take this and pinch it tight, as if you rely on the leverage to pull this, you're not going to know there's a problem. If that O-ring is out of the groove or anything else and you go to close this, you're going to feel the resistance with your fingers. But if you rely on the leverage, you're not going to realize that there's a problem. You're going to be able to close it up and possibly flood your camera. So, just some safety tips. When you are done diving, take the camera out of the housing and reseal it, and then just put the housing into fresh water and just work the buttons. Push all the buttons 5, 6, 7, 8 times, just to get any salt, any sand that's accumulated inside there. Turn the dials, push the shutter buttons, everything else. Then you can just leave it to dry. It doesn't have to be towel dried or anything else like that. As we get into it, with this camera being waterproof to 60 feet, it's the first time we've ever had that. So I want to say make sure this really stays dry, but you can take this whitewater rafting, catch and release fishing, anything else with it as well. So it's going to be an amazing camera system. We're hoping for delivery yet this year. Please, oh please, bless you. Yes.
Are you guys gonna have screen protectors for the camera itself? So
Yeah,
that
we
don't
actually
have
have screen protectors available now.
Okay.
They are, unfortunately, they're a little bit smaller there for the micro
Okay, so
cameras.
that'll work as well.
So you can still put those over the top of it. You know, cut one and splice it together if you want to. Hopefully we'll come up with some bigger ones to try and make it a little nicer.
And then, is the O-ring very similar to the 1400? To the 1400s? Is it the same size O-ring, or is it a
I
different
haven't
size
checked
O-ring?
that to see. I would just definitely stay with the O-ring that's recommended for the camera though.
And then last question: is there like a little? When I did 35 mil, when there would be like a little brush that had like a little pump on it, that you could kind of like blow away some dust and debris that could be on lenses. Do you guys gonna offer anything like that for
I'm trying
maintaining the
to,
inside of it?
trying to remember if it comes with a brush or not. I'll have to get back
You
with
can
you on
use a
that one.
can of air though, right?
Yeah, you can, you know, even take your tank, just blast it real quick with the regulator. But, you know, just any type of compressed air, the keyboard stuff you get at home, you can use that as well. But I'll check into the size of the screen protector, see if we're gonna come out with a 3-inch one also. Because that's extremely nice when you're getting old and you need longer arms to see what you're looking at, to be able to look at that big 3-inch TV back here. It's very, very handy. When you do go to put the camera in the housing also, it is, because of the spinning wheel, always a good thing. I always just set my dial on M. And then before I set my camera in there, I dial this over to M also. And that way everything is synced up, so if I go to the C mode, it's going to show C mode, it's going to show manual, it'll show the shutter priority. You can get to all of the different things, but you may be on M here and on P on your camera. Just keep spinning the dial till the proper exposure shows up on the screen. But it's really pretty easy to use, very intuitive. I got mine Monday before our trade show started on Wednesday, and just took it home and played with it and got pretty familiar with it in the course of a day, day and a half. So some pretty cool stuff. Yes.
Is there a spot for a boot light on the top at all?
Yes, there will be, as a matter of fact. Thank you. We have a couple accessories available. Sorry, they always say never turn your back on your audience. Usually this is called a hot shoe on a lot of camera systems, because this is where the strobe would hook up and it would tie into the electronics on the camera. Since there is no electronics on this is called a cold shoe. But what we are able to do is we can take this mount and slide this up on top and then screw it down. And then conceivably, we could just start running lights directly off the top of the camera. We wouldn't even have to take these trays with us. So we'd be able to put the strobe up here. We could put a photo video light. If you're doing a lot of macro work, you could come down here and put the light exactly where you need it for your macro. Any other questions? Anything I can answer for you if you just want to play with the camera a little bit more? Good to go?
Thank you, Pam, appreciate it.
Thanks very much.